And joining me now in studio is Tom Wolf, a TIFA research analyst. Tom, great to have you here with us.
It's been a long time.
It has. Thanks for joining us. Now, the polls revealed that Raila Odinga is the most popular candidate at this point with 49%. William Ruto follows with 41%. How important are these results 5 days to the election? Some argue that these are just people's opinions, but what is the significance of the numbers at this point?
Well, that's a very difficult question. How many hours do we have?
We don't have much time.
Well, I think the fact that these numbers are basically identical to those released by the other mainstream survey firms show that, yes, if respondents in surveys were the actual voters, and every one of them was going to vote, even if the undecideds, or if the undecideds didn't, then Raila would be over 50%, as we showed in one of our slides. I think that put him at 53% versus 45% for the deputy president. But as we all know, not just in Kenya, but around the world, survey respondents are not exactly the same people as voters, right. In this case on August 9th. I remember before the Msambweni by-election in late 2020, there were two surveys that were done, one by us, one by another firm, both showing that the ODM candidate would win by double digits, Mr. Omar Boga, and he lost by double digits. Now, in a by-election, turnout is much lower, only 40%, so what really mattered there was the activity of the campaign teams in the days between those surveys and actual voting to energize their supporters to come out and vote. We know over the history in this country of the elections going back to 61 and then 63 up till now that voter turnout in different parts of the country has been different. To a certain extent it reflects who the presidential candidate is. Okay. And now with the new constitution we know who the deputy presidential running mate is as well. But without a Kikuyu candidate at the top, and two Kikuyu candidates at the number 2 slot, I think those who've studied the history of voter turnout in this country don't have much to rely on in terms of precedents. It's quite a different situation. So although I would think that these figures, as from the other companies, would give the Azimio team some comfort, it will be disastrous if they say they've already won.
Okay, all right. So we
for them, disastrous for them,
right,
and a big boon for the deputy president in Kenya Kwanza.
All right, we only have a few more days left of the campaigns. Can these figures change significantly, drastically, or not a lot within the span of these few days?
Anything could happen. How likely is it within 5 days? But the fact is...
Well, less than. I mean, yeah. Up until the campaign trail ends.
Yeah. The fact is, as you pointed out a moment ago, we have no way of knowing. Well, let me take that back. The public has no way of knowing because of the law. It is perfectly legal for TIFA or any other survey outfit, whether sponsored by Nation Media Group or anybody else, to do a survey right up until August the 8th. What the law prohibits is any release of those figures. Right. So if you can give us the money, we will be happy to do one, right. And then we can tell you, if you promise don't to make it public until after the election, did numbers change in the final days of the campaign? And to save you a little money, I would suggest that we do this survey in just 4 or 5 selected areas. Mm-hmm. Then you won't, empty your bank account by funding it.
Okay, let's just look more broadly at this survey. Now, this particular poll explored 3 areas that TIFA has, in fact, not explored before. That is how important Kenyans view the 6 elective posts to be filled this election, how concerned Kenyans are about violence in this electoral cycle, and also how convinced they are that their lives will, in fact, change meaningfully if their candidate wins. What stood out most from the results?
Well, for me, and although I've done political research, qualitative and quantitative in this country for a long time, what really surprised me was the first of those questions we added. And I can't remember how we came up with this, but we see so much media attention on the presidential race,
Yeah.
which makes sense because it affects all Kenyans. We have 47 counties and 291 elected MPs. So once we get down, those are very local contests. But as we were just chatting in the office, we just thought, why don't we ask this question and see across the country, does this preoccupation with the presidential race, is that really the one that Kenyans are fixated on? In fact, I must confess, the way I originally framed that question was, aside from the presidential race, which of these 5 remaining are most important? And several of the folks in the office said, Bwana Tom, don't make an assumption. Let's leave the presidential race in there
Right.
and let people make up their minds. I said, absolutely. Yeah. So we changed that. And as you could see, that the choice between president and governor, I mean, the way that was rated as the most important was about tied. What also surprised me a lot is that in terms of the women's representative, only 2% of women thought that that was the most important position to be filled. Right. And almost an equal proportion of women as men thought it was the least important position to be filled out of all 6. So as we said in our release, and there's also quite a high level of least important mentions for senators. So I think those positions of representation, perhaps it hasn't really sunk into Kenyans as to what they do. And so if I were a woman getting elected as a women's rep next week, or a senator, sure, we have to do our work in our legislative houses, but I think I would need to strategize with my team planning for the next election, see how can I make my work more accessible through political education to my voters.
All right, and just before we close, Tom, so essentially are you saying if at the moment the most popular candidate is Raila Odinga according to the polls and William Ruto follows in close second, but if we see something different come past August, the August election, don't you reckon Kenyans would be very surprised, because a lot of people are basing the outcome on these opinion polls, which
challenge of opinion polling related to elections, not just here, but in many other countries. And that is, are our respondents being honest when they say that they're undecided? Are they really undecided, or are they hiding their real choice? There could even be some who are saying they're voting for one candidate, but they'll vote for another because that candidate they would like to vote for is not popular in their family or their community. Right. Or it may be in a situation where a retiring president has identified not his deputy as his preferred successor, but as the former leader of the opposition as his preferred choice. Are there some people who think, I better tell the research people that I'm going to vote for the person the president wants because he's the most powerful person in the country, right, but actually on August 9th I might not do it. I mean, I'm not accusing Kenyan survey respondents of being liars, yeah, but I'm just saying we need to do research on our own research once the real results come in.
All right. Tom, thank you so much for explaining that to us.
So don't go to sleep. It's not over.
All right, it's not over yet. Thank you. We're out of time, but much appreciate your insights. That was Tom Wolf, a research analyst at TIFA.